Hello, Brett Etheridge here with you again, and in this video we're going to take a look at a nuance of sentence corrections pertaining to modifiers, and specifically the difference between which and that. And actually we're going to dive even deeper and look at a 700 plus level concept regarding the word which that I think will be really eye-opening for you and enable you to get some of the harder questions correct. So let's go ahead and dive in. Now, the major difference between which and that has to do with whether or not the modifying information that they're introducing is essential or non-essential. Essential modifiers provide necessary information, and we use the word that to provide that modifying information. In other words, that introduces modifiers that are essential to understanding the meaning of the word or noun phrase that it is modifying. You don't use commas between essential modifiers and their nouns. And here's an example. The amusement park that just recently opened has the fastest roller coaster in the state. Of course, that introduces additional modifying information. It's telling us about the amusement park. It's the amusement park that just recently opened. And what's implied here is that I need that information to distinguish the amusement park that we are talking about. In other words, maybe there's multiple amusement parks, and therefore that modifying information is necessary. Hence, we use the word that. Contrast that with situations where we use the word which. Which introduces non-essential modifiers that provide extra information, non-essential information. We do use commas to kind of offset that non-essential modifying information. Hint, the bracketing technique is useful. We already looked at that in the bracketing technique video in the sentence correction lessons. But here's an example, right? So this is a variation of the sentence we just looked at, but what's the difference? So here we have the amusement park, but now we have a comma and we use the word which just recently opened, has the fastest roller coaster in the state. And by the way, both sentences are correct. It really comes down to the meaning that we're trying to get across in the sentence. Here, we offset that modifying information with commas. We use the word which, and what that means is that the fact that it recently opened is extra information. It's kind of good to know. Thanks for telling me that. But it's not essential to knowing which amusement park we're talking about. Perhaps it's the case that there's only one amusement park in the state. And so we're not confused as to which amusement park we're talking about. It's just nice to know a little bit of information about that amusement park. Oh, by the way, it just recently opened. So that's the major difference, and we can bracket it out. So on sentence correction, we know if you're testing subject-verb agreement, for example, you bracket out that modifying information between the commas. We can completely eliminate this information and not alter what we know about the sentence. We're not confused. Whereas if we had tried to bracket out that same modifying information introduced by the word that in the previous sentence, we would lose some meaning because we may not be clear on which amusement park we're talking about. So that's the difference, kind of the nuance between which versus that. And really, it's unlikely to be the deciding issue for any answer choice on the GMAT when you're looking at GMAT sentence corrections. It's good to know. Specifically, if you see the commas, you'll notice that it's non-essential modifying information, but the difference between which and that is very unlikely to be the deciding difference. However, there is a concept around the word which and modifiers in general that I want to spend the rest of this video talking about. That's that kind of 700 plus level understanding. It's something that will be tested and you are likely to see as potentially the distinguishing feature in a sentence that will get you the right answer. And it has to do with the difference between using which and the present participle on harder questions. So let me explain, but first, let's use this example as kind of context and we'll talk about it together because it illustrates the point that we're talking about. Go ahead and press pause, give it a try on your own, and then I'm going to teach you something and then we'll come back and talk about it together. So go ahead and press pause, give it a try. All right, so how'd you do? Well, let's take a quick look at the concept first and a quiz to begin, right? So I'm going to give you two sentences and I simply want you to tell me whether or not they're correct or incorrect. And think about why. So here's the first example. And by the way, maybe they're both correct and maybe they're both incorrect. But this first example is that the GMAT, comma, which tests annoying grammar rules, is an important part of the business school admissions process. Is that sentence correct grammatically? If so, why? Did we use the word which correctly? Yes, it is correct. So well done if you got that. I'll come back and I'll mention something about this in a moment, but take a look at the second example as well. And how might this be different than that sentence? The example reads, our air conditioner broke on the hottest day of the summer, which caused us a great deal of discomfort. Is that sentence correct or incorrect? Certainly sounds good, doesn't it? This is an example of a sentence. When we read it, it doesn't betray our ear. I mean, we wouldn't stumble on it if somebody said it to us in casual conversation, but is it grammatically correct? The answer is no, it is incorrect. And why not? You might be very surprised to learn that that is not correct. But the reason it's not correct is going to be crucial for you getting right answers on 700 plus level sentence correction questions that test this concept. And here's the rule. The rule says that you use which only to refer to the noun immediately preceding it, never to an entire clause. So let me go ahead and get a pen here. Look at example number 1. Which introduces modifying information, specifically that tests annoying grammar rules. So what tests annoying grammar rules? Well, if I'm going to use the word which, that modifying information must be referring back to the noun immediately before it, immediately before the comma. And it does in this case, right? That makes perfect sense. It is actually the GMAT, a noun, that we are saying tests annoying grammar rules. Now, that information is extra information, right? There's no doubt about what GMAT we're talking about. There's only one GMAT. I'm just providing extra information. So I use the word which. That's all correct. And the key here, again, the important aspect is that it's modifying the noun immediately before it. That's different from the second example, right? Because in the second example, what caused us a great deal of discomfort? That's the modifying information, isn't it? And if we are going to use the word which, according to this rule, which is a rule you need to learn and know, I must be modifying the noun or noun phrase immediately before it. So did the summer cause us a great deal of discomfort? No, the summer did not cause us a great deal of discomfort. Even the hottest day of the summer, right? If I expand the noun, the hottest day of the summer, that didn't cause us a great deal of discomfort. The air conditioner didn't cause us a great deal of discomfort. What did? It's the whole thing, isn't it? The breaking of the air conditioner, the episode, the event, that is what caused us a great deal of discomfort. And so I can't use which to refer to an entire clause. And so that is why example number 2 is incorrect. So we'll look at how this applies to that example you just looked at. Real quickly though, how might you correct a sentence in this case where which incorrectly is referring to an entire clause? Well, the first is to turn the first thought into a noun phrase. So remember our incorrect example. Our air conditioner broke on the hottest day of the summer, which caused us a great deal of discomfort. It's wrong because it's not referring back to just the noun of the summer. So what if we reword it and make it the breaking of our air conditioner, which is in fact the episode that is causing us great discomfort? When we reword it that way and we word it as an entire noun phrase, now that thing caused us a great deal of discomfort. That makes perfect sense. So that's a way to deal with this. A second way is to insert some additional information to make clear that we're referring to the entire incident, the entire clause, right? So we restate the thought and use the word that instead. As you see here, our air conditioner broke on the hottest day of the summer. An occurrence that, right? So now I'm not just using the word which, right? I can't just use the word which. We know that is not allowed. But by saying an occurrence that, it's clear that it's the entire situation, the breaking of the air conditioner that caused us a great deal of discomfort, and that resolves the issue as well. And finally, the third way, and I'm going to put a star next to this one because this is the way you are most likely going to see it resolved on the GMAT. So when you see a situation where you have which, that is incorrectly referring to an entire clause, you want to look for answer choices that replace the word which with the present participle. The present participle, of course, is the ing verb form. So here we are again with our example, and look how we rectify the sentence in this case. Our air conditioner broke on the hottest day of the summer, and it used to read, which caused us a great deal of discomfort. We know that's not allowed, so we'll get rid of the word which, and what we do is we change the verb to the present participle, the ing verb form, causing us a great deal of discomfort, and that's very clean. The present participle, by the way, is a very flexible verb form, and so just part of speech, and so look for that in right answer choices on the GMAT. But here, this is very often the way that you would resolve this issue in a correct answer on hard sentence correction questions. So with that said, let's turn our attention back to this question. And now that I've taught you the rule and I've given you a few illustrations, see if that helps you and see if maybe that changes your mind about the correct answer here. Go ahead and press pause again, maybe give it another try. Right, but so what's going on? Clearly, this exact situation we were just talking about, right? According to the National Pasta Association, per capita consumption in the United States, which has already been approaching 19 pounds a year. What has been approaching 19 pounds a year? Well, if I'm going to use the word which, I must be referring back to the noun immediately before it, the United States. But that clearly doesn't make sense, right? It's not the United States that has been approaching 19 pounds a year. It is the consumption of pasta, per capita consumption of pasta, that has been approaching 19 pounds a year. So we can get rid of answer choice A because the original is not correct. Do any other answer choices have the same error? Not answer choice B. Answer choice C has the same issue, which introducing modifying information that in theory should refer back to the United States, but clearly doesn't, so C is out. And then how might we resolve this problem, right? So we can move consumption of pasta to right in front of the comma. We could do what I suggested, which is to get rid of the word which and stick with just the present participle, approaching. And actually, that's what answer choice B does. It sticks with already approaching the present participle, and actually it just kind of moves it to the beginning of the sentence. And that's actually fine, right? So already approaching 19 pounds a year, the National Pasta Association predicts that per capita consumption of pasta will reach 30 pounds a year. What's wrong with that? Anything? Well, this violates kind of the rule that we talked about in the modifier video in sentence corrections about the common kind of setup that the GMAT likes to throw at you, where they'll give you kind of the modifier up front, a modifying clause, maybe an action or in this case, a description, a modifier, what was approaching 19 pounds a year in the United States. And we know that what comes immediately after the comma needs to be what is being modified by that introductory clause, that introductory modifying phrase. So what was approaching 19 pounds a year? The National Pasta Association? No, the National Pasta Association wasn't approaching 19 pounds a year, so we have a misplaced modifier. It's the consumption that's approaching 19 pounds a year, so that should have come right after the comma. So B introduces its own new issues. Even though it tried to resolve the issue, it did it incorrectly. It has another misplaced modifier error, so we can't obviously have that going on in a correct answer choice. Answer choice D says that by the year 2030, okay, that's fine. The National Pasta Association predicts that. This is a misplaced modifier, isn't it? This makes it sound like the National Pasta Association will be sitting around twiddling its thumbs, waiting until the year 2030 to make its prediction. You see that? So that's the issue here. Again, placement of modifiers is so important. It's really, it's crucial that you pick up on that. So by the year 2030, the National Pasta Association predicts that, no. What's going to happen is it predicts that per capita consumption will reach 30 pounds a year by the year 2030. So by the year 2030 should be right here at the end of the sentence, so that it's right next to what it's modifying, and so that we don't have any ambiguity. So D is incorrect for that reason, a meaning reason, which leaves us with the correct answer, answer choice E. So well done if you got that. Let me change pen colors really quickly. And this essentially resolves it kind of the third way that I talked about, the clean way, using the present participle according to the National Pasta Association. Per capita consumption, so that's what we're talking about, is already approaching 19 pounds a year, so we just got rid of the word which entirely. We don't need the word which. We use the present participle, is approaching 19 pounds a year and will reach 30 pounds a year by the year 2030. Boom. Nice and clean. All the modifiers are right where they're supposed to be. We use the present participle here to make clear that we're talking about per capita consumption. And in fact, we didn't do a comma. So kind of the method I suggested was to use a comma and then just use the present participle, like already approaching or approaching. Here, it just got rid of the comma and used a verb is. That actually is even better because that makes it a very active voice sentence, which we know we like on the GMAT. So there's really nothing to pick at there. It goes a step further to make clear that the correct answer is answer choice E. So well done. Hopefully you really understand what I'm saying here, and this is a concept that is a nuance to modifiers, and specifically the word which, even more important than understanding the difference between which and that. We want to make sure you understand the difference between which and when you need to use that present participle when referring back to an entire clause and not just the noun before it. So internalize this lesson, and now you're in a much better position to get those harder GMAT sentence correction questions right so that you can go out and dominate the GMAT.